What's up, Instagram? JuJuan Buford, managing partner at JSB Business Solutions Group. What I want to talk about is a conversation I just recently had with a business partner. And the conversation we had revolved around the ideal of time management. And the gist of the conversation basically revolved around a decision that a business partner of mine made where they decided, look, I'm just going to go out here with this entrepreneur endeavor, and I'm not going to take the trainings. I'm not going to study what I need to study. I'm just going to go out here and I'm going to wing it. And, the question I posed to the business partner was simply this. And it was like, look, I understand the urgency of the moment, right? The urgency to earn revenue, the urgency to go out here and find clients, the urgency to pay your bills. I get that 100%. And I don't knock it because I've been there. Like, I've been 20 years into this thing called entrepreneurship. So I'm not going to sit back and judge anyone. But what I wanted to communicate was, look, there's something called a quadrant or a framework in which you should kind of look at the decisions you make, right? And the framework that I tend to dissect, or I try to compartmentalize into boxes, if you will, is, the difference between those things that are urgent and those things that are important, right? The urgency is to earn revenue, but the important thing is to build a business with a solid foundation where at some point, like in any other endeavor, right? In the beginning, you're getting paid for things you're doing things you don't get paid for. So that later on you can be compensated for things you don't have to do, right? And that's the important part of it, right? Because entrepreneurship is difficult. It's not a game, right? People are watching these YouTube videos, they're seeing these Facebook posts, they're seeing these Instagram posts, and there's this impression out here about entrepreneurship that somehow just because you choose entrepreneurship, money's gonna fall from the sky like manna, and somehow everything's gonna get better. And that's just not the case. Like, just because you choose entrepreneurship, just because you're earning 50K, 100K, 250K, $1 million a year, life's problems are still going to come at you. Divorce, disability, sickness, disappointment, the whole 9 yards, all these things still happen, right? So entrepreneurship is not going to be a solve. And what entrepreneurship does do is it allows you to have choices in terms of how do you respond to things as opposed to react, right? But I don't want to get off task here. So I want to stay on the topic. And the topic was, okay, I know that I need to be trained. I know I need to participate in learning opportunities, but I just don't have the time. And the question she posed to me was like, how do you make the time? And I said to her, look, early on in my entrepreneurial career, I understand where you're coming from because I dealt the same thing, right? It was like I spent all my time literally trying to manage time. But what you learn when you're at the novice levels of entrepreneurs that you can't manage time. Like, you can't negotiate with time. You can't cry with time. You can't buy time a beer. You can't cajole time. You can't guilt time. You can't do anything with time. You can't manage time. Time doesn't care, right? And so at some point you realize it's not about time. And when you realize that, you begin to lose your excuses and find your problems, right? Because one of the things she said to me, which I'll be transparent, kind of ignored me a little bit, she says, look, my children are sick, school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And look, I'm not dismissive of that, but I'm also a single parent. And I've been a single parent most of my adult life. And what I said to her was this. When you look at your children, I want you to think about it from two paradigms. I want you to think about it from two perspectives. One perspective is, my children's sick. They need more time. I want to go to birth dates. I want to go to after school events. I want to do all these different things. And what I shared with her was this. 10 years from now, you can say, look, I didn't do A, B, C, and D for my children. I didn't do A, B, C, and D because of these challenges that were occurring in my life as it relates to being a parent. And I get that. I hear it 100%, right? And I shared her discussion that I listened to some years ago. I think it was with Gary Vaynerchuk. And at the time, the CEO of GE, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I see you're listening in, Ampy, so you probably can fill in on who I'm talking about, right? And I remember listening to the discussion, and someone in the audience said, look, how do you manage relationships, family, friends, going out for a glass of wine, right? Going to the anniversary parties, going to the weddings, going to all these different social events. And I tell you, one of the biggest lessons I learned personally from that talk was the response that each one of them gave. And what they basically said is, look, when you reach the level that we're playing at, it's not about time management as it relates to those things. It's about consequence. It's about consequence, right? And I believe it was Gary Vee who talked about how, he literally had to have the conversation with the family. And you're going to have a conversation with your family. You have a spouse and children. You're going to have this real talk. You have to have this real conversation. And I don't want to be dismissive, right? I'm not one of those individuals that believes you work yourself into the ground, run yourself to the ground, and then you look up and you have 10 years to live because you ran yourself to the ground and you cannot even function anymore, right? You've taken all these years off your life. That's not what I'm promoting here. But, what I took from that conversation was, look, they said it was about consequence and having a conversation with your family, having a conversation with your friends, having a conversation with people and saying, look, for the next 3 years, I'm about to go like zero dark 24/7. Like, you're not going to see me. I'll give you the weekends for your family and your children. I'll give my personal relationships the weekends. But Monday through Friday, if it's not about business, it's not getting done. So that means I'm going to miss anniversaries. That means I'm going to miss birthday parties. That means I'm going to miss going out and smoking a cigar and spending $200 at the restaurant and taking pictures, foodie pics of my steak and eggs, which is crazy to me, right? But instead, I'm going to take that money. I'm going to invest it in my business. I'm not going to be social. Instead of going out and spending $200 in 2 hours, I'm going to work on this proposal. I'm going to sharpen a saw and read this book. I'm going to take this online internet class, so I'm going to show up at a seminar. That's where I'm going to spend my time. And because I'm going to spend my time there, I'm going to look up 5-10 years from now. And yes, I miss the holidays. Yes, I miss the anniversaries. Yes, I miss the wedding parties. Yes, I miss going out with steak and eggs. Yes, I missed all this stuff. But give me 5-10 years to really focus on the things I need to focus on. And every day will be a holiday, right? So I run into this issue personally all the time, right? I have individuals right now who are on my head like, JuJuan, dude, you work so hard. You've come through so much, divorce and all kinds of issues as it relates to your children, man. You need to get out. You need to come smoke the cigar. You need to come out and drink. You need to come out and eat this food, have a good time. And I'm looking at some of these individuals, and look, I'm not rich or wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but I've reached a point, at least in my entrepreneur journey, where I don't wake up concerned about how I'm going to pay electricity and pay my rent, right? I've built a business, or really more accurately, I've built businesses where I don't have to wake up thinking about how I'm going to pay for creature comforts. And once again, I don't live high on the hog. Okay, I don't live in a $250,000 home. I don't live in $1 million mansion. None of those things. But where I reside is in a space for me and my children, and I don't wake up thinking about how I'm going to pay my bills. Now, this person that I'm talking to, or persons, to be transparent, that I'm talking to, I know they wake up every single day in distress. They wake up every single day in dis-ease, like disease, like, because they're stressing about how they're going to go to work and how they're going to pay their bills. And because I wasn't willing to do those things for the last 4 or 5 years, I don't worry about that anymore. I have different worries. Like, okay, now that I've gotten like basic necessities out the way, how I'm going to deploy my talent, how I'm going to deploy my time, how I'm going to deploy my finances to build assets that will pay me revenues whether I go to work or not. And so, what I shared with her was simply this: look, that may mean that some of my relationships must die, or that I won't diss people that were friends of mine, that were acquaintances of mine over the last 5, 10, or maybe even over the last 20 years. But what that means, I may have to distance myself. The bottom line is this: at some point, you realize you have to make new friends, right? And it's a lot easier to enjoy life when you have friends who are not struggle streaming, as I hear people say, who are not struggling to pay their bills. It's a lot easier when you get up in the morning and you're able to talk to someone and say, look, let's take this trip to St. Kitts. Let's take this trip to Maui. Let's take this trip to wherever, right? You just enjoy life. You enjoy your friendships a little bit better. And so, the conversation I shared with her I chose a consequence. The consequence is I have to make new friends. The consequence is I have to be willing to understand that not everyone's willing to make the climb with me, and that's okay, right? So often entrepreneurs pray for and wish for a certain lifestyle. They want to reach and grasp for a certain manner of living, but they're not willing to pay the price. They're not willing to accept the fact that some of their friends and their family just aren't willing to make the trip with them. And you're going to be alone a lot as entrepreneurs. So you better like yourself. You better like yourself, because entrepreneurship requires that you be alone a lot, right? Because think about it. Very few people reach this point in their lives. Number one, they believe they're capable of curating the life they want. And then they're willing to actually invest the time, right? Pay the price to acquire the skills, the knowledge, the insight, the mindsets, the frameworks that will deliver the results. And so you're going to be alone a lot, but you don't have to be lonely, right? And for me, I made up my mind a long time ago that if it's necessary for me to make new friends, to be around people who can take these trips and do these things and operate on a level where I want to operate and where I really create generational wealth, and I'm just not talking about it, then damn it, that's just the price I'm going to have to pay, right? And that's kind of the conversation I had with her. The calculus is different when you're an entrepreneur, right? And what I don't want is I have a situation where my children look up 5-10 years and I'm like, Dad, you sacrifice his time, you sacrifice his energy. Like, we watched you grind. You miss things. And not have anything to show for it. And my only response is, well, I didn't do the things I was supposed to do, right? Because of you. And isn't that the worst? That's got to be the worst to say that to you. What I want to say is, look, I paid the price for the next 3, 5, 10 years, whatever your timeline may be. So every day can be Christmas. So every day can be a holiday. So every day we can go to the Jets game, or we can go to the game in New York, or we can go to the game in Los Angeles, or every day can be a shopping spree. Every day can be a vacation. Every day we can live a life of satisfaction, right? And satisfaction is a Greco-Roman word. Latin, Greco-Roman? Anyway, it's late. But anyway, satis means enough. And then, of course, we know what action means, right? Satisfaction, a life of satisfaction means you took enough action to live the life that you want to curate for yourself. And this is the conversation I had. And I said, look, you got to get out of this ideal time management. You got to get to priority management. What are your priorities? What are your priorities? What's most important to you right now? Do you want a bigger house? Do you need a vehicle that's more reliable? Do you want to get these simple stresses and strains out the way? Do you want to send your kids to a better school? Do you want to be in a zip code where there's not gunshots? I'm just being transparent, right? I'm a Detroiter, from Detroit, Michigan, so I'm going to go in. Do you want to be in an environment where you can spend the majority of your time thinking about, how can I edify my children? How can I provide an environment where if I choose to take on a life partner, they can be themselves in that environment? How can I create fertile soil, right? And in order to set these type priorities, of course, you got to take some time to reflect on what your values are. What matters most to you? Everything else is negotiable. But you got to be willing to ask yourself, what are your values? What are things that matter most to you? When you think about your life 3, 5, 10 years from now, how are your values going to manifest? What's your core focus? What's the impact that you want to have in the world? What are the things you need to do to become the person that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Because there's a lot of people out here who just believe they should have things just because they wake up in the morning. But how do you become the person that's worthy of the things that you say you want, right? Because, look, this isn't, I'm just going to be real. I can only be me. This isn't some type of situation where you're going to a revival, where everyone pats you on your back and tells you you're enough. This isn't a situation where you're going to some support group where they pat you on the back and emotionally try to solve your problems, right? SALVE, not solve, but solve, right? SALVE, not SOLVE. This is not a situation where you're going to be in an environment where individuals are going to tell you what you want. This is entrepreneurship. And in entrepreneurship, assuming you're a moral person, so let me get that out the way, right? You're a moral person. Okay, good. It's not about right or wrong, it's about consequence. If you don't do what's necessary in terms of your KPIs, if you're not waking up and making sure that you reach a certain threshold in terms of number of individuals who need to learn about your business so you could have an opportunity to present to them so they can make an educated decision. And if you don't learn how to present information and your value prop in such a way, whether they do business with you or not, whether they make a buying decision or not, they leave the interaction thinking, I like this person. I feel like I know this person. I trust this person. They have a real value prop and they're willing to speak favorably about you to other people, right? That's how you scale, right? People get caught up in scaling the transactions. No, scale the relationships, right? Scale the relationships where people know you are a trusted commodity, right? Because of your character. And I'm talking about from a moral standpoint because you show up. You deliver on your promises. You communicate your value prop with clarity, right? You solve problems. You're not so much trying to be interesting, but you're interested in helping individuals who are your audience or the person sitting across from you via a coffee table or eyeball to eyeball via Zoom, right? And that's what it ultimately comes about, right? So you go from time management to priority management at some point, right? So you start thinking about your goals and where you want to be 5, 10 years from now. And you start thinking, okay, I'm going to reverse engineer these things. And if it doesn't fit, I'm not going to do it, right? So when you start priority managing, what ends up happening is you say, okay, look, in order to be where I want to be, in order to be the person I want to be, so I'm really deserve it. That's what I was looking for. Deserve the things I want to have, right? I have to be those things first. The attitude comes for the altitude, right? So your reputation can be effed up. You could have been a really jacked up person, but you can adjust your character by first adjusting your mindset and how you spend your time and how you manage your life. And it will take a while sometimes, depending on how effed up you were in your previous life. It may take a while, but your reputation in the marketplace will change, right? Because you're meeting new people. You're leveling up. You're making new friends. You're making new acquaintances. And the people who are so caught up in the old you, they're going to be upset. They're going to be mad because they don't have access to the new you anymore. That's why they're talking about the old you, because they don't have access to the new you anymore, right? Because your character has changed, not because of what you think you're so concerned about what's going on with other people, but you've made up your mind about the type of person you want to be, the type of lifestyle you want to have, and you make the adjustments, which means you manage your priorities differently. So instead of going out and, tossing bottles, you invest that money in marketing. You invest that money in finding an integrator, somebody that can actually help you level up in your business, right? I'm a visionary. At my core, that's what I am. I'm a visionary. I'm a creative. So I need operations people around me. I need people who know how to execute. I execute now pretty effectively just because I have to. Not because I necessarily want to, but I have to. It's the role I got to play. When you're an entrepreneur, you got to do the things that are necessary, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you realize it's not about how you feel at the time. You have to do what your business and what your goals require of you. So once again, you got to do that deep work. What are your values? What's your core focus? How do you want to impact the world, right? How do you want to serve people? What type of reputation do you want to have when it's all done, right? Because at the end of the day, when you die, most people are going to forget about you after 2 weeks. And then most people are going to stop talking about you after 6 months. And if you haven't developed a reputation where people have a vested interest in promoting what it is that you've built, promoting the values that you espouse, promoting your impact, that's what's going to happen. And if this ideal of building wealth and financial independence and what I oftentimes hear is a catchphrase, generational wealth, Look, your quote unquote money won't survive you. It's the lessons, it's the values, it's the principles, it's the impact, right? And so if you're thinking really big and you're listening to this, hopefully some of this is kind of like seeping in for you, right? You're waking up not thinking how many transactions can I perform. That's just simply a result. That's a byproduct of your impact, your values, your principle. And so once you begin to define those things, you can define your priorities. There's just certain businesses, there's certain relationships, there's certain things I won't involve myself in. Not because they suck, not because the people suck, not because it's not something that could be financially beneficial to me in the short term, but because it's not in alignment with my priorities, right? And that's the conversation I had with her. I said, look, you have to reach a point where you start to manage your life. You start to quote unquote manage your time, but you really manage your priorities, where you consider how you spend your energies doing things that are in alignment with your priorities, right? And if they don't align with your priorities, for me, when I look at a business, if I can't scale it passively with the skill set and knowledge that I have, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. I don't care how lucrative it is. If it doesn't compensate me a residual income, I'm probably not going to do it. If I can't figure out a way to make it residual, I'm not going to do it because I'm not afraid of hard work. But I'm the type of person, I'm going to work hard. I need to have something to show for it. I got to have something to show for it. So if I'm looking at an opportunity that's not in alignment with my core values, my core focus, how I want to serve, can it be passive? Do I have the capacity to make it passive? Is it going to pay me a residual income? So at some point I'm being compensated for work I don't have to do. I'm not going to do it. Right? That's just my prism. That's just the way I view things. And there's not time to go into my quote unquote my values and core focus. And that's an individual decision for everyone, right? Some of you may be saying, look, I don't need 250. I don't need $1 million. I just need $50,000 a year, guaranteed. $50,000 a year, I can keep a roof on my head, I can eat, I can take care of my family, I can spend time with my children, spend time with my spouse, significant other, that's what you got going on, whatever the case may be. And look, that's okay. Look, the average Joe in the United States of America, or Jane, is only earning 30, 40, 50K per year. Guess what? It's the same thing for entrepreneurs. Let me tell you right now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing 50 to 75K per year, trust me, you are not mediocre. You are not, if you got a business in particular that pays out revenues like clockwork like that, you're far from mediocre, right? Where whether you roll out of bed or not and go to work, you created systems, and because of your values and your principles, you've attracted the right people. You put them in the right seats. Where these things are happening, trust me, you're winning. You're winning. Don't get caught up. Do not get caught up in the things, right? It's about quality of life here. All right, so I deviate a little bit. But anyway, back to the subject matter at hand. So that's the nature of the conversation I had with her about managing the priorities. Now, look, once you start managing priorities, you're becoming elite. You're becoming elite. Once you start making decisions with the time that you have in terms of how you're going to pour your energies into certain things, managing your priorities, right? What's in alignment, what you want to accomplish, what you want life to look like 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, or even in death. Then you are a master when you start managing consequences. When you start looking at your life, not from the standpoint of priorities, but consequences. When you start understanding how priorities and consequences are interrelated and how what you choose to do will create. So you go from checkers to chess when you can start understanding, because checkers, you can win if you can think, on a checkerboard. I mean, if you can think 3, 4 steps ahead, you're winning. It only takes about really 3, 4 steps to really determine what's going to happen. But chess, you may have to be able to think 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 steps ahead, right? And that's when you become a master. So now you understand your priorities and how you invest your energies, the times you have, right? What's most important? What are the top 3 or 5 things that you need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, Is that correct? Semi-annually? Semi-annually, whatever, it's late, like I said before. Or annual basis. Okay, you are really, once you start getting your life organized, when you can answer what are the top 3 to 5 things I need to accomplish, right? You've got the priority piece down. But now you're really thinking ahead when you can start thinking about consequences. So, okay, I got my priorities down, but now I want to start thinking 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 steps ahead. And then when you start understanding how your priorities really allow you to curate the consequences, right? And I'm going to use a real simple example. And I'm going to start wrapping up here because this wasn't supposed to last as long. But anyway, 2 people wake up in the morning. One person goes to McDonald's. I ain't been to McDonald's in a while, but let's say it happens. You go to McDonald's and one person eats a Big Mac and some fries. I think they're still doing Big Macs, right? Big Macs, fries, and a Coke. And then the other person has a salad and some water and something with some lemon in it, whatever the case may be, lime, whatever the case may be, okay. They both go to McDonald's. They order food. You don't know a difference between the 2 people a day from now. You don't. They look the same. If they're the same weight, same size, same genetics, sex, all that fun stuff, they look the same. Hell, they do it for 3 to 5 years. I mean, not 3 to 5 years. I'm thinking ahead already, right? You already see where my mind's at. Anyway, if they do it for 3 to 5 days, you don't notice a difference really between how they look. 7, 10, 14 days into it, you still don't notice a huge difference in terms of their build underneath their clothes. But the belt is a little bit tighter. They start smelling a little bit differently. You notice a lack of energy from one person as opposed to other. One is a little bit more sluggish, mentally and physically. And then if it happens for 30 days straight, then you start noticing some real differences, right? The belt ain't just tighter. The belt don't fit anymore versus the other person. The other person's breath, their skin, when they sweat, the deodorant doesn't quite work the same. The energy level isn't the same. One person can still run a mile in 8 minutes. The other person, a mile's out of the question, man. They may have a heart attack. They ain't going to be able to make it. Well, look, it happens the same way, right? We go from the priority is health decisions. The consequence is what the end result's going to be, right? And the one thing about human beings in general is that we oftentimes overestimate what we get done in the short term and underestimate what happens long term. And it happens the exact same way. And so the conversation I had was, look, I want you to think about it like this. Yes, I know participating in trainings consumes time. I know reading books consumes time. I know getting into networking events or circles or environments consumes time and money because they're an investment for the travel, might be investment to participate. These things will consume time. They will consume financial resources. But the question becomes is, what's the consequence, right? If you read 10 pages of a good book a day, if you're a slow reader, it may take you 30 minutes to an hour a day to do that. But you look up 12 months from now, and if you're reading 10 pages a day, that's somewhere between 280, 300 pages. Most books aren't even that long. So, you've read 12 to 15 pages of 12 to 15 books at the end of the year. If you read 12 to 15 books on leadership, you read 12 to 15 books on financial planning, investment planning, money management, sales, marketing, whatever the thing is you need to learn and become in order to get to your goals. If you do that, at the end of a year, assuming you learn the lessons, you're going to be a different person. You're going to be accomplished. You're going to be able to say you only got 1% better every single week as a result of your reading. If your income was 52% higher, if you're able to accomplish 52% more, if your skills increase 52% more, if your latent talents were allowed to manifest, and you created a space, fertile ground, where the fertile ground created 52% more production and growth. If you just increased 52% more, where would you be? So yeah, in the short term, there was some pain. But long term, because you're able to accomplish more, because you're more valuable, you can command more in the marketplace, which means you can earn more, right? And that's, I guess, the conversation I had. And it was egging me because I knew when I woke up tomorrow, I was going to forget like 50% of it. And at the end of the day, the reason why I jump on platforms like this is, yeah, I got stuff to sell, but I'm not selling now. I just want to see more entrepreneurs win. I believe entrepreneurship is empowerment. I believe entrepreneurship is the surest way to give people control of what happens to their kitchen table. If you are the employer in your community, you have a lot of influence. The employers in you have the bag truly if you're employing your neighbors, your family, and friends. You get to determine whether or not a liquor store or rec center shows up. You determine whether or not that lawn gets cut. You get to determine whether or not the police arrive in 2 seconds, 20 minutes, or 2 hours when you're the employer, right? You have influence in a special kind of way. And ultimately, for me, that's what this is all about. It's about creating a situation where more individuals make that transition. And look, not everyone is quote unquote ready to be a full-time entrepreneur. That's okay. We don't need everyone. We just need more. We just need more. And everyone could benefit from more entrepreneurial mindset, especially given what's going on in today's society. Like, go on our days, you're going to work for 20 or 30 years. This ain't your granddaddy's economy where you're going to work for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever the case may be. And then there's a golden parachute waiting for you. No, those days are done. You better have an entrepreneur mindset. You always better be thinking about what can I do to improve, level up, become more, go further, go harder, be able to bring more value. That's the only way you're going to really find security, right? And for me, that's what this game is ultimately about for myself personally. And I'll be transparent. Time management, I ain't thinking about that no more. I'm at the point now where it's all about priority management, and I'm getting really good at that. Getting really good at saying no, pruning the tree, so I can focus more on my energies and more of my effort and becoming elite at the things that I know I'm really, really, really good at already. And now reaching a point where I can start to map out the consequence, right? The consequence 3, 5 years, 10 years from now. And ultimately, for me, that's what it's about. And I hope this lesson lands with anyone who's listening to it or listen to the replay, right? About playing that indefinite game, about more individuals becoming financially independent, about more individuals building wealth, about more individuals curating a lifestyle that they desire for themselves and having as much agency as you can have when it comes to this game called life. So, with that being said, celebrate everyone's success in advance. Goodbye for now.